Pilate had knowledge. Jesus' words, Pilate had them. He had reason, logic. And not only that, via his wife, he had divine revelation that Jesus was innocent. And yet, what does he do? His career is on the line. He is governor. It's a good position, a cushy job. If a riot breaks out, he couldn't stand accountable for that. Pilate's in a sticky situation. But Pilate decided that his career as governor of Judea is more important than justice and right. Cowardly compromise is a sin. Matthew chapter 16, verse 26 says this, "For what will it profit a man if he gain the whole world and forfeits his own soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul?" You know the answer is nothing. If we give up, it pains me. Years ago, I was studying with a young man who'd fallen away from the church. And I said to him, "What is keeping you out of church?" He said, "I just don't feel it. I don't feel it." I said, "I believe in God, but I don't feel church. I don't feel like reading the Bible." And I thought, how sad. This young man gave up his faith just because he didn't feel it. What are we going to give? What's the price we're willing to pay? We can compromise a lot of things. And it might be something so small that causes us to give up our faith. But what would we give in exchange for our soul? Pilate's sin was in not doing what he knew to be right. That's all Pilate's sin was. It wasn't that he condemned him to death. Pilate simply did not have the guts to stand up for truth and justice. What are we compromising in today? What are we compromising in? James chapter 4 and in verse 17, James says, "So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin." Some folks say a man has to make a living. So they work on Sunday. They work during church hours. That's one of the most common excuses, or used to be. I say a man does not have to make a living. A man has to die. Wendell digs graves. And I can tell you what, there's not a single person that has ever yet dug their own grave in this area. Eventually, we're all going to die. Eventually, somebody's going to dig our grave. But it's how we die. It's how we face death and how prepared we are for it that really matters. Pilate had to make a living. That was his excuse. He liked his job. Hebrews chapter 9, verse 27. The Hebrew writer says, "Just as it is appointed for man to die once, after that comes the judgment." So where are we spiritually when we die? If we were to be called home today, where would we be found? What would our situation be? Would we be ready to face? an answer for what we've done, or in Pilate's case, what we did not do. Matthew chapter 12 and in verse 30 of that chapter, Jesus says, "Whoever is not with me is against me. Whoever does not gather with me scatters." In other words, Jesus says if you're not working for him, if you're not working for truth and justice, you're destroying. Pilate's failure to work for truth and justice nailed Jesus to the cross. Again, back in the book of James for a moment. James chapter 1 and verse 8. James chapter 1 verse 8, James writes, he says, he is a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. See, Pilate knew what was right, but wrong won out. Friends, I want you to examine yourself this morning. Ask yourself, are you guilty of any of these things? Is there a cowardly compromise in your life? Are you failing to do the right thing? I certainly hope not. I believe we have a wonderful group of people here. And I believe that we have amazing young people. But I do know that Paul in Romans 3:23 says all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. So we all have to examine ourselves to see whether we're in the faith or whether we're not. If you're here today and we can help you in any way, maybe you've not yet become a child of God. Think about that. Think about that. If you've got questions on becoming a child of God, we'd love to be able to help you. You know the greatest problem on the day that Jesus died? Jesus stood without a faith. What if Jesus were on trial today? Would you be his friend? Would you stand with him? Or would you hide away in your shame? If you're here today, you're subject to invitation. Won't you let your wants and wishes be known? So together we say 312.